All right. Well, welcome everyone to the Horticulture Technical Requirements version 4 draft policy webinar. I've got me here, Casey, and Aaron from our operations team. Still got another few people we're expecting to be rolling in here, so we're going to give a minute or two before we actually get into the content, but thanks in advance for joining. All right, I think we're at a good starting place here. So thanks again for joining. If you weren't here just a second ago, this is the webinar for the Horticulture version 4 technical requirements draft proposals that came out a couple of weeks ago, and we're in the middle of a comment period for right now. So if you're in the wrong place but interested in that stuff, feel free to stick around. Otherwise, I'm sure you all know what you're doing here. For today's call, we'll do some introductions. We're going to go through some of the webinar logistics. We'll get into the details of the version 4 scope, and then those kind of standard requirements that we've got and changes that are happening specific to version 4. We'll review those things. We're also going to talk about the full development timeline and what it's going to take us to get to the actually start accepting applications to list products as version 4 on the QPL. And then we're going to get into those operational details that we've got ready to share today, and there'll be more to come as we get to the final policy. And then we're going to share an exciting update with regards to another application process change and an opportunity you might all be excited in if you're listing products or if you're looking for products to show up on the QPL more quickly, potentially. And then we'll have some time at the end for some questions and answers. From our side, we've got myself. I'm the technical manager for the DLC's horticultural program and our SSL program. And we also have Aaron Feldman, who's on our operations team and is the senior technical operations manager. So we'll both be presenting. We'll both be keeping an eye on chat and questions that come in. So feel free to write in at any point, and we'll do our best to get to you either live or follow up with you if we don't have time to discuss your questions or comments today. With regards to some webinar logistics, the slides and recorded webinar will be posted on our DLC news and events page shortly after today's presentation. You're all muted automatically, and if you want to communicate with us, make sure you use the chat feature or use the questions pane. And we'll make sure whenever we have time at the end for question and answers that we dig into those and do our best to answer as many as we can with the time that we've got today. If you haven't seen it yet, with the draft release, there's a comment form. There are no key questions in it this time, as it is a much smaller major revision than we've done generally. But we want to make sure you have the opportunity to give us any feedback you have on any of the proposals that we've made in the version 4 technical requirements draft. So if you haven't already, I know we've had a few comments come in, but if you haven't yet, make sure take a look. Let us know your thoughts. If you're in support of all of the things, that's also great to hear. If you have any criticism or suggestions for how to do other things better, or something you were hoping to see in this technical requirements but isn't there yet, and you want to advocate for it to be looked at in a future draft or future revision, let us know. So you have until December 19th to submit these comment forms as part of our formal comment process. But we're always open to having conversations. So at any point, if you have a comment specific to version 4 or not, feel free to reach out. And if you are submitting comments on version 4, make sure you send those to our comments@designlights.org inbox. And once you do, you'll get a little message from me back thanking you. And then, as you know, we've got that 6-week comment period. So At the end of that, we'll be taking a look and putting up a kind of comment summary form. And if you've submitted a comment, you'll have access to that. So thanks in advance if you've already submitted comments, and if you haven't yet, I look forward to your feedback. So now to get into some of the details specific to what we're doing in version 4. As always, we have general goals for horticulture technical requirements, and first and foremost, it's to accelerate the adoption of energy efficient lighting in controlled environment agriculture, indoor horticulture, and support those energy efficiency programs and end users that are using the QPL for rebate incentives or code compliance, and confirming that products that they're looking at for their particular facilities or incentive applications are listed with the appropriate information. And on the backside of that, making sure we're staying on top of protecting the integrity and value of the QPL for all of our stakeholders. Specifically in version 4, there are 3 key updates, some with some bullets below that, right? But the first and foremost one is we're proposing an efficacy increase. We have some clarifications or enhancements to existing technical requirements, specifically focusing at addressing some of those operational inefficiencies that we've had and what's been more burdensome for those manufacturers getting those products listed, and understanding what exactly are our technical requirements talking about, how does that relate to their products, and how can we clarify those things to make it easier to understand. Same for dynamically configurable products that have been traditionally, since version 2.1, forced to list as DC powered. Looking at some enhancements in more details with regards to LM80 applicability for distinct colors or narrowband emitters, and some other kind of smaller language changes throughout that are just not really changing any technical requirements and just trying to better communicate them. Also, looking at removal of the eligible lamp categories. Were introduced in version 2.1. Haven't had any uptake, so we're kind of revisiting that and looking for your input on it. Just as a reminder, the draft policy does cover the technical requirements proposals, and we will be discussing some implementation details in today's webinar, but all of that kind of final information with regards to how version 4 is going to impact your listings or your new products, and how you test and get those listed, and what fees that's going to be associated with are going to be coming out as we get closer to the final policy and start actually accepting those applications. So stay tuned for that. Should be around March or April of the coming year, just a few months out. With regards to our overall development timeline, since version 4 proposals are not as substantial as a major revision generally is, we're kind of expecting to get through this with a single draft with a 6-week comment period that started a couple weeks ago and ends December 19th, leading us to a final policy release in March. Depending on the comments that come in, there may be need for a draft 2, but we're not really anticipating it at this point. And then we'd start accepting and listing new products as version 4 on Hort QPL starting in April. In terms of products that are already qualified on the QPL as version 3, you'd have until essentially the end of the year to get those products updated from version 3 to version 4. And then starting January 2026, we'd have a fully transitioned horticulture version 4 listed only qualified products list. And again, just as a reminder of the kind of specific draft proposal details, is that we are looking at PPE increase based on the same strategy that we've done for every major revision so far, and have some clarifications or enhancements for color tuning, dynamically configurable products, looking at removing lamps, and then a couple other generally smaller clarifications. In terms of what's changing in our technical requirements, if you've had a chance to review the draft, you'll notice not much changed. The one threshold that has changed is efficacy. And this is something that our plan is for every major revision since we developed version 1 back in 2018, is to kind of revisit efficacy and continually move that bottom bar in terms of what it takes to get qualified to our QPL. Some other changes you may see are just generally removal of the lamps language. So warranty, there is proposed to no longer be any kind of distinct warranty requirements for lamps, since there will no longer be a pathway for lamps. But otherwise, all of our thresholds are staying the same, or at least are proposed to stay the same. If you think any of them should change, let us know. Specific to the efficacy increase, and as I have already kind of mentioned, we do have that major revision cycle that takes place every 2 years and is really aiming at driving energy efficiency in lighting in CEA by increasing our efficacy threshold to delist the bottom 15% based on the QPL. So in version 3, we increased from 1.9 to 2.3 micromoles per joule, looking at the same exact process for version 4, and landed on a proposal of 2.5 micromoles per joule. Specifically, how this impacts listed products, looks very familiar to what we had in the version 3 development process, where you see generally quite a few products are significantly above our threshold, and that bottom 15%, as you see is on the left-hand side of this dashed line here. So those products on the left-hand side would, if they haven't already, need to update some internal components, show that they're now meeting our new efficacy threshold, and then update to version 4. Everything that's kind of above that threshold right now is not going to be impacted by these version 4 proposals. And we're aiming for being able to have an automatic update where it still relies on you to then go in and confirm, yes, this products are still on the market. We do want to update it to version 4. And then there would be some kind of non-performance affecting update fee for relisting to version 4 associated with that review, and just generally relisting. Up next, we've got the removal of the lamp eligibility pathways. So as I had mentioned, in version 2.1, we developed several pathways for new types of products to be qualifiable. One of those was a couple different types of horticultural lamps, those being LED replacements for linear fluorescent lamps and LED replacements for mobile base HID lamps. Since then, we've had 0 applications come in with regards to any of these lamp types or other lamp types. So we're proposing to go ahead and clean up our technical requirements and application process a little bit by removing those pathways. So it shouldn't impact any of you unless you're planning on listing to these lamps categories in the near future. And if that's the case, let us know, advocate. These are not going away, and there should still be pathways for them. Otherwise, we haven't seen any traction, so I do expect this to kind of go through. With regards to dynamically configurable products and the pathway proposal that we're looking at for those, it's very similar to what I was just saying about lamps, but we've had a lot more uptake with regards to DC powered products and dynamically configurable products, which became eligible in version 2.1, and generally has created some issues for manufacturers who are looking to sell those products as an AC powered fixture and want to represent it on the QPL as how they're actually selling it. So we're proposing to kind of relax that pathway that's been forcing these products to be listed as DC by kind of isolating that DC powered module of these dynamically configurable products and allow them to kind of list either way. And Aaron will be going into more detail on this in a few slides with regards to the operational details and how that would impact the application process. We do have spectral tuning clarifications, like I had mentioned, and generally there are no changes to the technical requirements or testing or things like that that are needed to actually qualify spectral tuning products. Just an additional level of detail in here to kind of clarify, these are generally the 2 types of spectrally tunable product technologies that we see in our applications or outside of our applications. and just trying to better communicate how our technical requirements, testing requirements apply to these two specific types. The first being those with predefined spectral options and allow users to kind of tune to specific set points within or as defined by the manufacturer, and not really flexibility outside of tuning to those specific things. This may be, different levels, right, depending on how that product is designed and whether it's designed for kind of different crops and you want to tune to a specific spectra for a different crop, or if you want to tune to a specific spectra for a specific stage of crop growth. The second being customizable spectral options. And this is really where it's much more dynamic and up to the end user to control and set exactly where within this full and wider kind of tunability range in terms of spectral output can occur. So generally we would expect this to have some type of variable controls, whether it be sliders or knobs or an interface where someone can then go in and say, all right, these are all the channels that I can control, and I can kind of configure the spectrum to be any proportion of any of these channels at my own desire. But otherwise, no new testing, no requirement changes for these types of products, just really clarifying. Some of the additional clarifications and enhancements that we've made are on this slide here. The first and one of the bigger ones is looking at LM80 applicability for narrowband emitters, where we're really clarifying that a distinct color is defined by the LED manufacturers. It shouldn't be restricted by manufacturing tolerances or binning options, but there does need to be a limit between kind of claiming LM80 applicability between distinct narrowband emitters or distinct colors, and we're proposing a plus or minus 15 nanometer limit for those claims. If you have specific input on that, definitely make sure you submit a comment. We corrected some of the language for our total harmonic distortion current requirements, where there was just essentially a sign issue, kind of suggesting that the threshold was the wrong way. So that's been corrected. Thank you for the folks who have pointed that out. And then just generally kind of updating our technical requirement language to also support pathways for test reports to the latest version of industry standards. So previously, where we said we require LM7919, now it would be, you could still test LM7919 or you could test LM7921. Similar for other standards that we require, and generally opening up that to be supportive of industry standards as they develop. So I went through that kind of quickly, but there's not too much in there. Like I said, it is a kind of minor, major revision. So the first, make sure you keep this one in mind, right? The efficacy threshold is being proposed to increase. There were essentially no other technical requirement changes, though, just kind of clarification enhancements to existing technical requirements, and then the removal of the lamp categories, all being proposed. Again, here's a quick view of the draft development timeline, where we're aiming at having a final policy release in March, start accepting applications in version 4, having a fully transitioned QPL by the end of 2025, going into 2026. So about 9 months listed products would have to update from version 4 to version 3. Again, 85% of everything that's listed today, as long as it's on the market and still out there, should have a pretty easy time updating, because we're not looking for anything new. We're not changing any other thresholds, just efficacy, and then adding some additional details, as I mentioned. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Aaron Feldman to talk about some of the operational details. Thank you again for joining today.
Great. Thank you, Casey, and thank you everyone for joining. For those of you who are in the Midwest like myself, we were treated to our first snowfall this morning in late November, but I wasn't too worried because we have some new DLC Hort updates hot off the presses, fight off the cold, and we will get started here. So first, we'll talk through the submission impacts of the version 4 changes that Casey mentioned. So the lamps, the AC/DC, LM80, and spectrally tuning. For lamps, as this is, doesn't affect the products that are qualified today, but the submission process does accommodate for those, which will be updated. So there will be changes to the application Excel form, making sure that old forms are acceptable, as well as changes to the questionnaire to remove some questions. The next topic is the definition change for AC and DC products. There are two scenarios, or one scenario to talk through here for the two different policies. So in version 3, which is the current version, if you have a static set of components, for example here, two LED modules that are not rigidly connected and a driver, and those must submit through the DC pathway today. In version 4, they could submit through the AC or DC pathway. So to go through an example, if you sell a model or have a model that has includes an example of the two LED modules and a driver, and you have a single model number that represents that set of components, in version 4, you can list that as an AC product, even if those modules are flexible, connected, and can be installed in the field vertically or horizontally in a row. Alternatively, if you have a model for an individual module, such as shown here, you could list that in version 4 as a DC product. So in summary, for version 4, if your model includes all your modules and driver, you could list that as an AC product in version 4, or you can list a specific module as DC. And then regarding LM80 applicability, as Casey mentioned, we are updating that to not take into account those binning variations and manufacturing tolerances. We primarily focus on writing technical requirements on industry available consensus standards when they are available. And regarding LM80 applicability, this is a standard that's in development at IES. And if there are folks on the call that would like to participate, it is going through the ANSI process. And I'm sure if others would like to participate in a working group, feel free to reach out regarding LM80 applicability. For spectrally tuning, as Casey mentioned, there's no changes to the threshold values or what needs to be submitted. We help differentiate the two different types of spectrally tuning capability that we see today. So an example here of two different spectral tuning categories. So there's the customizable spectra and the defined spectra. So with the customizable spectra, there are the settings that are displayed on the QPL, and those are correlated to specific LEDs. And this is an example. These would, and so for this example, there are 4 LEDs, and for each setting that's shown on the QPL, the performance will be shown for each of those settings with one of the control points or LEDs set to the maximum with all the others at the minimum for each different LED. Alternatively, in the predefined spectra, there are certain settings which the manufacturer has already chosen for you, essentially, for a specific design strategy. and those have distinct percentages or currents for LEDs. And for those types of products, those specific settings would be shown on the QPL as the performance, rather than the extremes like in the customizable option. So that is the extent of the version 4 changes for operations. Aside from those changes, we're excited that we're announcing a new pilot program to have expedited applications. So this is an upcoming option for a faster reviewer response. And this is not tied to version 4. However, thought this would be a good timing to talk to this audience about it. And so the price is $16.50 per expedite application, and that is to have the reviewer response time. So there's no changes in the requirements or the review process, just the time allotted for reviewers to complete their part of the review. It would be selected at the time of submission. And as I mentioned, this is a pilot program. This is new to the DLC. And so we are planning to launch at the beginning of December. So that is actually, I apologize for the error, but that's this year. So just in a couple of weeks, 2024. And it'll go from this December to May of next year. And we will see how the program succeeded, if there were any issues, and how to better refine for the future. This is something that manufacturers and submitters often request, and we haven't had a mechanism to meet that request. So on the next slide. So this is the timing between a non-expedited and an expedited application. And you can see as well the additional fee per application. And so each different stage and the different review type is halved. I will mention this will not impact the timing for non-expedited applications. So those will be reviewed according to how they are today, to the published review timeframes. Expedited applications will get reviewed according to the faster timeframe to allow, and with the fee to allow for better different resource loading. And with this program, hoping to alleviate some confusion up front. So one of the thoughts may be that the applications will be completed in half of the time. So that may be the case for an expedited application. However, there are other aspects to an application review that impact the timing. And so the timing is based on the reviewer time to review the materials. And so in an expedited application, that would be halved. However, there's the application timing often depends on other items in the application that are lacking clarity, or other documentation that doesn't have all the correct language or requirements as noted in the policy. So those other items will impact review time, as well as the time that is expedited. The next is that the review of expedited applications is less stringent and requires less to submit. So this is also not true. So regardless if an application is expedited or not, the technical requirements are the same, and the documentation that's needed to submit is the same. And so the only change is the time that reviewers have to evaluate the materials. And with that, I will give it back over to Casey to answer any questions. Thank you.
Yeah. So like you said, it's not a whole lot in version 4 that's new. That's why we shared some of the expedited application opportunities that are going to be coming up in the next couple of weeks. But yeah, if you have any questions right now, I see one in the chat from Sri. Thank you for that. And I am actually responding. Yeah, for those of you who are not familiar with our DC process so far, essentially there's a way to go that we have a process for in terms of derating the DC efficacy that your product tests at to compare more apples to apples against the same efficacy threshold that AC products are being qualified against, because there are those known losses that occur from AC to DC conversion. And they're going to be specific to your application and how either you show derating occurring for your specific power supply, driver, or if you don't do that, there's a standard derating of 15% with regards to your DC efficacy, and then comparing that against the PPE as an AC derated efficacy. I see another question with regards to the expedite application and it applying to SSL. I can answer that, or if you'd like to, Aaron.
After you.
All right. Yeah. So essentially, no, it will not apply. It won't be an opportunity for SSL applications at this point. And kind of as we're piloting it for Hort, we'll hopefully get a lot of lessons learned, be able to refine this kind of experience, and then get to a point where we may be able to pilot also an SSL and see how that goes. But at this point, only horticulture applications will have the opportunity for this expedite application.
And Casey, I see another question on expedite. The question was, expediting application is simply cutting down the deadlines that a reviewer has to review certain scenarios. Yes, that is correct. So if there's some questions in an application that require some answers, the time for the manufacturer's submitter to get the answer and respond, is up to the submitter. And so for the review process, the reviewer time to review new materials or to get it to the next stage is cut in half.
Rochelle, your question is about updating products that will meet the version 4 requirements and already listed as version 3. Yes, there will be a process for updating those for you to confirm version 3 listed products are still on the market and you want to relist them as version 4, and then there will be a relist fee associated with that. It will not be the same as, qualifying a new product, for example. The exact fee is not set yet, but there will be a fee. All right, I see a question about if a fixture could switch between 2 or more spectra, will it be clarified as predefined spectra or customizable spectra? Yeah, it ultimately is going to depend on those spectral options that it's switching between and whether they're defined by the manufacturer or they're kind of dynamic in nature, and the actual grower will be able to kind of change individual current to channels of LEDs or however it happens to kind of come up with a spectrum of their own. But if you've got 2, say one for seedlings, and one for flower, and those 2 settings can either be selected, then that would be predefined. Any advantage applying a product as an AC product in comparison to a DC? Well, it's ultimately, I think, going to depend on how that also ties back to what you're selling, how you're selling it, and how that looks in incentive applications. If those things are mismatching, you know, if you're previously having to list a dynamically configurable product as DC, but it shows up to the end user and to the utility as an AC product, that kind of mismatch generally created issues. So if you're selling it as AC, and you list it at AC, hopefully those problems will go away. Otherwise, there generally should not be a benefit directly for listing as one or the other, and it should be specific to how you're designing and selling your products. See a question about, does DLC collect data on or have any data, typical or average efficacy for non-DLC certified products? Trying to get an idea of efficiency different between certified and typically non-certified. So this is something we've looked at over the years. We've done a couple market characterizations, one back in 2020 and one earlier this year. In general, at that point in the time this year, it was before our version 3 delisting, and we were kind of estimating, or rather the consultant doing the market characterization was estimating that the QPL reflected about 90% of the market. So there are folks out there who are not listed. We're generally finding that they're in kind of more residential segments and not necessarily commercial and industrial. And it's not just efficacy where they're different, but they also are going to have shorter warranties. They generally don't have safety certification to UL 8800 and a few of the other things that we require for any DLC qualified product. But in terms of like typical or average efficacy specific to non-DLC certified products, I don't have that information.
And Casey, there's a question that came up if with the upcoming efficacy increase, are there plans to offer a premium and standard similar to SSL?
It's something that, you know, we're batting around and considering. I think there are kind of different implications with regards to premium and what that means, and kind of the value that gets communicated with that, and how it ties back also to spectral characteristics, etc. So it's not something that we're proposing in version 4, but if you have any ideas around that, I'd love to hear from you and have a conversation. So submit a comment and we can start that dialogue.
And there's been a few questions on the update process and automatically updating from version 3 to version 4. As Casey mentioned, those details are still being finalized, as well as the technical requirements. I think, Casey, you were mentioning minimizing the burden on manufacturers to update for this.
Correct. Yeah, we don't know exactly the details, but most products should be eligible for version 4. Just the bottom 15% generally by efficacy that are no longer meeting thresholds kind of have to do additional stuff. But at a minimum, you can expect that you're going to have to confirm and want to relist to version 4. Otherwise, we are still working on the kind of exact details for how this transition will occur. All right, I think I'm seeing no more new questions coming in. So with that, I'll go ahead and move to the recap. Basically, we are 2 weeks into our 6-week comment period. Comments are due by December 19th. There'll be a comment summary that goes in after that to all commenters so that you know we did receive your comments and we're doing our best to incorporate those into our technical requirements for the final policy, which is expected in March 2025. Yeah, we'll start accepting applications aiming at April 2025, and then there'll be essentially 9 months between the final policy and when version 3 listed products need to update to version 4. That being said, unless there are any new questions that have come in, thank you all again for attending today. Thank you for being involved in our technical requirement development process. If you've already submitted comments, thank you again. And if you haven't yet, I look forward to hearing from you. So have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.